Good morning, Hallowed Haven family. This is After Dawn, the show where we sit down to have a cup of coffee with the cast, crew, and creators behind Hallowed Haven Studios Productions. I'm Scott, and I am joined by my co-host, Saul. Hello, Saul.
Yes, hello, I am Saul, and today we're talking about Scion Apotheosis, Episode 10, the season finale, where probably the biggest thing to happen, and that is the trial and vote of Stefan to see if he would continue to exist and be adopted by one of the Pantheons or just be put to the sword, as it were. Honestly, well, one, I always love a good nail biter when it comes to voting for whether something that a party has been working for most of the end of the season would come to pass, and I love how it was handled, and I love just how actually tense it was. There was no guarantee that it would go the way the party wanted, but with just how they worked it out, it turned out to be honestly my favorite episode of the season. What do you think, Scott?
Well, I thought it was great. I especially like the inclusion of the various pantheons that were there for the vote. I think sometimes we, as storytellers and game masters, kind of forget about those things that we don't know a whole lot about, so we just kind of brush them over. But I think it was great to see all of these gods doing things, and all of the assisting gods that were played by the SBCs being involved, and just having this whole big large cast. It was very cool just to have them all interact with each other. I thought that was very cool, very fun kind of thing. And the memes that came out of that were amazing, and we'll talk about those a little later today. And today we're actually having a little bit of a different format. We're going to have a little bit of a different kind of show today, because we're not joined by just two guests like normal. We actually have three today. Today we're joined by our ST Bloody Porcelain and PC Sticker and Gary. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Lots of voices.
Three.
This
3+
isn't bad
hours
compared to what we had on stream during the finale.
Yeah,
it's
I
11
got some
people.
questions.
Nothing compared to it.
Yeah, we've got some questions about that, because wrangling cats is a thing.
But to start off, we're going to go with a bit of softball question to BP. Well, first off, welcome to the show again.
Thanks. Been a hot minute. I'm
Yeah.
excited.
This is the first and only time you've been here during the actual Scion season. The last time you were here was for the hype episode.
Yup. We were rolling into the season. I was very excited and very nervous, and now I'm excited and exhausted.
So despite being absolutely exhausted, how much fun did you have running this campaign?
Oh, it's an absolute blast. It was kind of a mile a minute a lot of the time. There was a lot of stress, a lot of moving pieces to manage, but I think it's, and this is not to be a humble brag, I think this might be one of the best shows HHS has ever done. And it was so much fun to get to work with everybody and kind of bring the vision that was in my head to life, even though it didn't quite turn out how I expected it to. In the end, my players surprised me as they are wont to do. But it was great. I loved every minute of it, even when I was stressing out and wanted to cry because I had so much to do.
Yeah, you set that bar real high for, the next show that follows.
You're going to be fine. I'm really excited for Chill.
Well, Gary and Sticker, I want to hear your thoughts about the campaign. How much fun did you have doing it?
Oh, just oodles upon oodles of fun. It was phenomenal. I'd never played this system before. I'd never done Scion before, but I really enjoyed as a concept of a system. I think this whole vibe that it gives off was really awesome, and the story that BP told was super amazing and awesome as well. And just the whole cast, we got along so well. Our chemistry was so great that it was just a delight every week to come back and play the character again and again, because I always look forward to the next fun interaction or the next intense moment, and it was just a blast all the way throughout.
Yeah, I agree. Hopping off of that, every moment that we all got together, I kind of was like, okay, what's gonna happen this time? What joke are we gonna come up with this time? Like, what character development situation's gonna happen this time? Like most things, I didn't go in with a like besides the plot stuff that we had to do. Most things I didn't go in really with a plan, except for like every now and then I had reached out to Gary at one point and was like, hey, so Coda was a student of Oliver's. How do you feel about if this thing happened? Because I felt like something had to happen, but I was like, but I want to talk to you about this. And then I didn't want it to us have this happen and then immediately say it on stream. Like I wanted us to, slowly work on bringing that out and seeing the effects it had and such. But nothing besides stuff like that. I didn't really plan most things that would happen. And I don't know. I feel like there was a lot of times I threw stuff out there because besides just me as a player, also Coda is Coda. And it was nice to see people play with it. And I like that. I like RP pretty much.
Yeah, and it's really great when players, they drive their own sort of plot stories in the background too, right? Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, BP, let's talk about that thing you were mentioning before with all the people that you had in the green room for the last episode. I mean, throughout the whole campaign, you had like a fairly large green room in comparison to what like normally happens for a lot of streams where you have just the 4 and maybe one extra person. How much how do you have skill for that?
So I got very lucky that everybody a lot of the people that applied to the game were kind of the perfect people for the game that I was running. My players were all really dedicated and very excited, which made managing them very easy because they kind of did a lot of stuff on their own. And my SPCs were all also very excited, despite the fact that they didn't get brought on as players and as PCs. I always worry when I ask someone to be an SPC that they're going to be disappointed. But so far from what I have found is that people will immediately latch on to whatever I give them and will just go nuts with it. Gary did it for Wayfarer and JD and Legacy, and Diver did it for Apotheosis. I had the most active big bad I've ever had in any game, like because I've had people come in and guest star as big bads and stuff in non-streamed games before, but I've never had a big bad as active as good old Heretic was. Every single week during sessions, he was messaging me. So, and between sessions, but mostly during sessions, he would give me feedback on what was happening, and he was cheering in his little thread that I had made for his information. So yeah, so a lot of it is mostly just telling people when they need to show up and making time to have the conversations that need to happen, so that like your SPCs are prepped for what's coming. And it's about keeping people in the loop and being available and letting people be passionate about the thing. As long as everybody's passionate about the thing, I'm happy. I know that I can kind of be a little hands off and let them fill in the pieces.
Yeah, that's fair.
I have no idea if I answered your question. I'm sorry.
No, you did. You absolutely did.
Yeah, you absolutely did.
I don't feel like it's a skill thing. I think it's about letting other people do what they're passionate about and just kind of being there to nudge them in the right direction.
Yeah, I'm hearing you say I had great SPCs. That's how it happened.
I did have great SPCs. I absolutely did. The game would not have been what it was without them and without the players. Like I'm just here to kind of nudge people one way or the other and fill in blanks. Everybody else did all the work.
Yeah, you were just wrangling the cats. The cats were doing cat things.
So, got a question for Gary.
Oh,
You made memes throughout the entirety of this campaign, and you said recently in chat it was your role to make the memes. Were you a meme guy before this, or were you just inspired by VP's plotline?
absolutely. Just about every campaign I've ever been involved in be that as a player or game master. I've always made memes of like the session just because it's very fun for me. I enjoy that, bringing the comedic aspect into it, especially if it was like a really intense session. If I'm running like a horror campaign or something, just allow the players to decompress, be like, oh yeah, let's laugh at this. But it's just very fun for me. I really enjoy doing it.
Yeah, because I was just watching the memes come out each and every time, and I was always laughing my ass off, or just like, man, I wonder how the others feel about all this.
I looked forward to it every week. I was just like, when are the memes going to happen? Come on, Gary. I know you've got them. I know you've been making them throughout the session. I know it.
Yeah,
Thank
same.
you.
It's like Gary's character journal is just memes.
If only. My personal journal would be just memes, but the Oliver journal, very different.
Yeah, the Oliver journal is amazing. So good. So good. That might have to, when all of this is said and done, or between sessions, might have to be like Patreon releases because it's just incredible. I love reading everybody's journals.
I had a question about that. In fact, I was wondering that maybe not because season 2 and everything and spoilers, but if we could somehow like release all the journals for like at least between the players, because I would love to read everyone else's journals too.
Maybe I'd have to talk to everybody and see what their comfort levels are, and yeah, maybe.
All right,
Maybe we'll let the players see it. The parent, the players behind the parents, got to see a lot of the journal entries because it was stuff that I thought would help them kind of play off, the PCs. So like Vidar, JD got to see all of Sarah's journal entries and things like that.
I mean, it helps that they're gods, right?
Well, I mean, even though they're gods, they wouldn't actually be able to see stuff like that. But I thought that from the perspective of giving them, because they don't have the time on screen that the PCs do to work with each other, that it would help to kind of help them figure out what their chemistry they were going for was. So, I mean, I'm pretty sure Legacy read all of the journals for everybody because she's got access to everything on the server. But yeah, no, like JD got to read all of Sarah's stuff, and Diver got to read all of Gary's stuff. I don't know if I gave him the last 2, but I know he got to see everything before that. So, no, and it was very much to their benefit because I feel like it helped those players kind of feel a little bit more informed and a little bit more sure of how they were going to approach things.
Fair enough. Now, Sticker got a slightly harder hitting question for you.
Mm-hmm.
We've asked some of the others this question, but who was your favorite character, PC or SPC, in this campaign?
PC or SPC?
I have to ask because this has gotten asked of other people. Does SPC include all of the non-played out NPCs, the ones that only I control?
Yeah, we kind of
were
a
big cast.
Yeah, we just left that open.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I would definitely say Oliver and Net. That's for
I can't
me.
imagine
I wonder why.
That's for me.
I can't be your favorite. That's not allowed.
That's for me and literally Coda. Like, obviously, Coda sees the rest. I almost said the coterie. She sees the rest of the band as very important to her, but like, she would say her close people is Net and Oliver.
Net has supplanted Pele. I don't know how to feel about this.
Oh well, Pele too, but that's
I'm conflicted.
Cat.
as the person who plays both of them, I don't know how to feel about this. I'm sad for Pele, but also happy for Net.
No, Pele's like a given. Like of course she's gonna, but like if we're talking like other people, then yeah,
understood.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be real. Pele was kind of a dick at some points, but he had to be.
Yeah, he's a cat.
It's natural.
He's a cat. Also, sometimes they needed somebody to be a dick. Sometimes somebody had to be a little bit mean and teach them a lesson for them to understand what the world was about.
Mhm.
Funny that a cat had to be the one to do it, but you know.
Well, last brewing question, and then we'll just start getting into more of, we'll just start drinking our cups. But this is for everybody. There's plans for season 2, right? Yes?
Yes, there's plans for season 2. We don't know
What are you
exactly.
excited to see in season 2? That was my question.
Oh, well, without giving any spoilers, let's say that while the PCs got what they wanted, it was not without some significant cost during the finale. So I am looking forward to them having to face the consequences of their actions.
Beautiful. Always fun to
that
see.
scares
It should.
the consequences of our actions. That doesn't make sense. Why would that be a
well,
thing?
if it isn't the consequences of your own action.
Oh no. What am I most excited for? Well, I don't know what's in store for us at all, other than that eerie message there. But there are two things I would like to see happen for Oliver, just because I think they would be very funny or entertaining. One, I want him to get into a bar fight. I think that would be super fun. And two, I made a joke about this after the session in like the chat. I'd like to see him go on a date and for just go disastrously, just for it to be just terrible in every way. But goddamn, is he trying?
That would be hilarious. I may have to make that happen. The second one at the very least.
I'll take either.
Maybe they'll both happen at the same time.
At the same time, that would be
Ooh.
great. Yeah.
Let's see. I kind of agree with BP a bit. With the wanting to see the consequences of our actions. Like, because this is also one of the first big steps I guess Coda took to be like, oh no, I mean she's taken many steps, but like this is a big step being like, no, I will take this. What was it again? Like to bear his true name or something like that. She's like, this is like a big responsibility, and I know I've been throwing it around that I want to become like the god of rebellion, or like I want to take care of the strays or stuff like that. But she's like, it's got to start somewhere, and this is where I want to start.
Oh,
So
baby girl, it is so much bigger than you think it is.
Yeah, well, and that's why I'm excited to see what ends up happening from that, and seeing how Coda can grow from it. Other than that, I'm just excited to see any other connections or stuff that happens, or if Heretic becomes like a main character, or I'm really excited to see the new connections and stories and jokes that we all get to make, and for Oliver to say fuck. So
Yeah. I mean, I wanted to happen. I want him to do it. It hasn't had the opportunity yet.
Got to be the right time for Oliver
gotta
to
be the
drop
right
an
time.
F-bomb.
Yeah, you can't just do it anytime. You got to make it at a time where you can savor it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we're not trying to go for an R rating or something here.
Yeah, no, you only Oliver gets one F-bomb per season.
That's hilarious.
Like Breaking Bad.
All right. Well, let's start drinking some cups. Let's start asking hard questions. BP, when you set out to start the campaign, did you have any idea it was going to end in a vote to make one of your antagonists a member of the Beijing Confused Squad?
No, absolutely not. That was all Cyan. She came to me, I want to say between episode 7 and 8. I think was 7. I think was the episode where they were planning to kill him and how they were going to pull that off. And then she came to me between episodes and said, so I had some thoughts, and I went, oh boy, here we go. Okay. And she kind of took me through it, and she goes, is this even possible? Am I going to completely screw things up? I said, honey, you do whatever you want to do and I will make it work. Because it's not my job to dictate the story. It's my job to facilitate it. Right.
That is the correct mentality.
I had no idea that this was going to happen. So, and I'll be honest with you. And I was very, very upfront with her. I said, look, you can try. You are welcome to try anything. I make no promises that it will work. So there was always that chance that it was going to fail, and I was very clear with all of the PCs about that. From the moment the idea came up, I said, I am happy to go down this road with you, but you are not allowed to be mad at me if it doesn't work out for you, because I'm not going to be that GM who just hands it to you. I'm going to make you work for it. And thankfully for them, it worked out. It was great. But it's not at all where I thought it was going to go. I really thought that Stefan would die at the end of season 1, or he would get away and he'd be back for season 2. I figured one of those two things would happen. I was not expecting a trial to, get him a stay of execution and possibly allow him to be a proper Scion in the future. Not where I thought that was going to go.
Interesting.
Speaking of the trial, Gary and Sticker, with that vote for Stefan, how worried were you that it just was not going to go your way?
Oh, so worried, so unbelievably worried, especially when we actually got to the voting, where we were getting the yays and our ayes and nays coming in, and I was counting on my hands how many we were getting, and there was a stint where
Me
it was
too.
four nays in a row, and I was like, oh, we're done, it's over, we're screwed. And then we, at the buzzer, we got the popular vote, and I let out a loud exultation of a sigh of relief, but I was muted to make sure it didn't come through, because man, was I on the edge of my seat there.
I will say I was concerned, but at some point, and that's also just me as a person, I was like, it is what it is. What's gonna happen is gonna happen, and we're gonna work with it. And
A very Coda mentality you had there.
Because it's also at some point, because I was trying to count as well, and then I got distracted and I lost count. So it's just like, I don't even know where we're at right now, man. So
to be fair, also a very Coda thing to have happen.
Yeah. Because I was just like, wait, we got yes. And then my cat came over and I looked at her and I started petting her, and then I turned back and then it was like, no. And I was like, wait, what's happening? And then I was like, oh, I guess we're not going to get it then. And then I was like, yeah. And then I heard, oh, it's favorite. Also, a little funny moment. So you said I, and then my brain was just like, is she going to say anything else? Because I thought you were saying a sentence. So I was like, I what? What is, and then then what's his name? Allreg/Dolgrub kept going to other people, and then I would hear I, and I'm like, they all keep saying I. What are they talking about? Because my brain was thinking yay and nay. So then at some point, that's also why I wasn't counting, because I was like, I what? And then I was like, oh, wait, no, we're going into the voting. And then I was like, wait, how many votes was that? And then I got distracted, and I was just like, what's going to happen is going to happen.
What will be. Que sera, sera.
Yes, sir.
It's like we talked about here on After Dawn. It sounds like you were becoming Coda, or Coda was becoming you. There was a blending there of your character in person.
Oh, yeah, most definitely.
Life imitated art.
Well, speaking of the votes, the chat was actually kind of curious if that coin toss with Ganesha was something you had planned out, the outcome of, or if you really tossed a coin.
So here's I have a question as an answer that could potentially lead to an actual answer. Do people really want to know?
Ooh. I mean, they asked.
They did ask.
That's fair. And a lot of people have asked since that, so I guess I'll reveal it. It was, in fact, a coin flip.
Ooh.
Now, it wasn't a coin flip in the moment. I had flipped it at a time where I had a moment because the players were talking amongst themselves. But following the conversation between Sarah and Ganesha, I decided that because Sarah leaned into the luck aspect of who he is, because he has other things that he's associated with, but luck is one of the big ones. Because she leaned into that, I said, well, after a conversation like that, it has to come down to a flip of the coin. So I did. I grabbed a quarter that I happened to have on my desk, and I flipped a coin during a quiet moment.
Yeah, so that's interesting.
Had it gone the other way, y'all would have lost.
Yeah, I was thinking that. So yeah, our success was literally dictated by a coin flip. Oh my gosh.
Life imitates art.
I love that.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, there was that follow-up question about like what would have happened if it had been no. But
If it had been no, there would have been a tie, at
yeah,
which
sure.
point one of two things would have happened. One, I would have had it come down to it just, he lost. He didn't get the popular vote, and that's what was required. Two, if people had been willing to continue going a little bit longer, I would have potentially opened up the opportunity for a trial by combat
Mm.
because it was a tie.
Wait, against who? Who we fought?
Dwarves.
Oh, okay. It's like
Um,
if gods are about to step up, we
you-
lose.
You say, oh, okay. But, well, it was either going to be the dwarves or I was going to bring in Net because she was hanging around. You guys just didn't see her.
Mm.
And there's
Ned
a
versus
chance
Coda.
it would have been Net versus the whole band because they wouldn't have stood a chance if it had just been one person. Even Chris couldn't take Net. Net is significantly more experienced than any of them, so her legend is much higher. She has much bigger powers and better stats just by dint of how long she's been at this. So it would have had to have been the whole band without Stefan's aid against Net. And I still am not sure they could have won.
Mm.
She wouldn't have killed any of them, but she'd have knocked you guys flat on your butt.
Intriguing. Well, that's a good answer and an interesting one.
Wow.
Yeah, no kidding.
Everybody's like,
It's like shit.
Stew on that.
They
A
got
whole
real
bunch-
lucky.
A whole bunch of decently strong heroes versus one strong demigod. Yikes.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
It's okay.
It would have been great even without the emotional damage.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm not sure. Season 2 would have started with Coda having to heal from that.
Yeah.
Not to mention Net. I don't
Oh,
know
yeah.
what kind of damage it would have done to that relationship. So
That
I'm
actually-
glad that it worked out for you guys.
That actually makes me wonder. It was a question I thought about just now. So did they ever, get back together? Not that they broke up, but like.
So that is something that we have to discuss offline.
Mhm.
I assume that there is still some tension there, but they are not broken up. They're just in a rough place. Because Net has very, very strong feelings about this whole thing with Stefan. But she did say, ultimately, she wasn't the person you had to convince. You had to convince her pantheon. You had to convince the celestial bureaucracy. And part of convincing them was winning the popular vote, which you did. So she'll respect it, even if she's not happy about it.
Okay.
But beyond that, let's just say Coda's probably going to have to make up for some stuff.
Oh yeah, she's willing
Coda's
and
pretty
able.
firmly in the doghouse for a little while.
Yeah, you have a rough batch on your second day of your relationship. Not good.
Yeah, and it's not just like a little spat over like who pays for dinner. It's hi, I'm going to fight for the life of this guy who murdered your friend.
Not just her friend, essentially her big sister.
Yeah.
Yeah. It'll be okay.
But
Question,
in mythology, relationships tend to be like that. They tend to go from 0 to 100, and they tend to be incredibly rocky. And most of them end in disaster, but some of them go well. So we'll see.
Like literal disaster. Like
Yeah. Or
tornadoes and
somebody
stuff.
gets turned into stone or a plant. That happens a lot.
Or a bear, which
Or a
has happened.
fish.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of ways that this could go. We will see.
Oh dear.
Oh dear.
Yes. Oh, dear.
Season 2, it's just Coda as a fish, and everyone has to carry around in a little bowl.
Like, oh,
Not
Who's
again.
feeding Coda today?
I don't want to be a fish.
I don't want to be a fish.
So, important question to BP. Overall, did the pace of the campaign go anywhere near what you were thinking when you set out, aside from, entirely veering from what you had originally planned to a trial for the soul of an asshole?
I'm sorry. Are you saying did the pace of the campaign go the way I
Yes. Yes.
planned? Yes and no. It was definitely much more active, and it felt very visceral to me. Even during like the down moments which there ended up being more downtime than I expected. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just because of the way that the players, the PCs tackled a lot of their problems. Um, so yeah, for the most part, it went about the pace that I thought it would, with the exception of the last 3 episodes. Last 3 episodes kind of threw me for a loop. It was a lot of talking, and I really thought that it was going to be a lot of fighting when I originally mapped out like how I thought that the season was going to go. I expected that the last the last 3 episodes were going to be a lot of combat, a lot of war stuff, a lot of jockeying for position and dominance over the wolves, and that's not at all how things went. But it's fine because the story was incredible, and I think probably better than I originally would have, what I originally had planned.
Yeah, I was expecting there to be a lot more of that too, but at the same time, there was some interesting developments that were occurring, so it was cool to watch anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Gary Sticker, do you have any questions you want to grill our ST with now that we're at this segment of the show?
Ooh.
I'm not sure if you can answer this, but I'm wondering what swayed the gods that we didn't get to talk to that said A or I?
So actually most of the ones that didn't agree were ones that you guys didn't talk to.
Mm.
Ultimately. The ones that you guys went out for, you for the most part managed to sway. Except I think it was Huang Di was the one.
I got beef with Hong Di now. I got beef with him.
Fuck
Fuck that guy.
Oh, listen, you were warned he was a jerk.
Yeah, I know. You did warn us of that. So I wasn't like all that surprised, but I was upset. I was like, "Come on, man!"
Like y'all talked to Ra, who only voted because Coda agreed to his terms. Only voted your way because Coda agreed to his terms. Athena because Chris was respectful and charming and didn't argue. He presented his case and was kind of the perfect the perfect when it came to debating about it. Like he didn't get belligerent. And because had he done that, it would have all been over. Frigg was always going to vote against. Like y'all would have had to have pulled off like the miracle to end all miracles to convince the Aesir to vote for you. Quetzalcoatl, nobody talked to. Amaterasu, nobody talked to. Legba as a figure was kind of gonna go for it. Lou was a little bit of a toss up, but ultimately I thought that their presentation went really well. Like how they presented their arguments, I thought that he favored that. Plus, y'all kind of had some people in your corner when it came to him, who might have twisted his arm a little bit. Huang Di was just not convinced. And to be fair, he was always going to be really hard to convince. He's just not a nice guy. And he had literally just kind of gotten to deal with the fallout of Net nearly dying. So it was always going to be a tall order to convince him. Ganesha, like I said, was purely a coin toss. Sarah approached him really well and handled that really well, but ultimately because she leaned so hard into luck, I left it up to chance and it worked out for her. And Anahita is a very life-oriented god. So even though nobody really talked to her about it, she was always kind of leaning for mercy.
Great. Yeah, there's a couple of people I was like, oh, I wanted to talk to, but then I was like, we're good. I think it's good. We just did a roll. That was nice.
Yeah.
After the fact, I feel like I should have talked to Amaterasu instead, even though she seemed like she was really mad at me, because I think it would. This is like after the session I came up with like a tactic where I was like, oh, I could have done this with her because you mentioned that she's a very vain goddess. So I was like, yeah, what if I went up to her, apologized for insulting her, and just kind of went like, yeah, I don't blame you for voting against it. Like I wouldn't do that. Doing so would come off just like way too daring. You would be like the talk of like all the pantheons, and I couldn't handle that. And I was like, maybe that could have worked. I don't know.
Possibly. I would have had to have seen how it went. I can't say that she would have been an easier use of or a better use of your time, mostly because Oliver, I think. So the whole thing with Amaterasu is that if any of you had tried to really interact with her on a personal level, you would have been spending willpower because of her divine beauty. That's why you were warned that she could be a big distraction and that you had to be careful.
Yeah.
And Oliver tends to clam up so much around beautiful women that I wasn't sure. Like, I was kind of glad that you went for Huangdi because out of anybody in the party, you stood the best chance with him. It's just that you didn't approach him the right way.
Yeah.
And it definitely went better than Amaterasu probably would have.
No, I appreciated your depiction of Amaterasu, by the way, as a person who, lived in Japan, has studied Japanese stuff. I was like, that's a decent depiction of Amaterasu for sure.
Recognize that it was probably not the best depiction ever, but it's not my area of expertise. I can handle most of the Aesir, most of the Greeks, most of the Norse, the more typical, like the pantheons that you expect people to be really into in this part of the world. I was very intimidated by the celestial bureaucracy and the Amatsukami. I was like, oh no.
Yeah, I mean, the celestial bureaucracy was especially one when you brought that up. I was like, oh man, I'm surprised and impressed that she's handling that because that's a bit harder. But your depiction of Amaterasu was pretty spot on. With if you were to imagine Amaterasu in kind of our modern setting, you weren't too far off from what I would expect.
Thank you. I took my cues from the book, not gonna lie. I read the book a lot and went, well, if this is how they have her, this is what I'm gonna do.
Mm-hmm.
All right, my turn for a question then, I guess. I gotta know, were there any like close second choices for like our divine parents, or any like instance where it's like, oh, I don't know which between these two before you just settled on one?
Yeah. So essentially, what I did was I went through the I sat down and I made a list of all of the gods, in like a spreadsheet, and then I put the players or the PCs at the top, and I read through the books and I compared and contrasted who would be a good fit. I think I knew who Coda was going to get the second I read the character. I was just like, oh, I know exactly who she belongs to. She's easy. Chris was a toss up. I had listed, I think Osiris, Athena, Izanagi and Izanami were both options. And Chris had a number of the Tuaha that I also listed. But ultimately, looking at the different options that I had, Artemis was pretty high up there. I think the only one who was a potential contender was Athena. And I'm glad that I went with Artemis. I think she just fit in better. Teddy, I always knew was gonna belong to Brigid. Oliver was, oh goodness, who did I have listed? I had Tote, Isis, Hephaestus, Odin, Hachiman, Tsukiyomi, Urzuli, Blue, and Ogma. But Ogma was kind of at the top because of the connection with literature. Sarah was a toss-up between Horus, Tyr, and Vidar. And I went with Vidar because, one, I thought it would fit the story better. And two, her background stuff hinted at such a strong drive for wanting to right wrongs and settle scores, that I was just like, young Sarah is essentially like the quintessential Vidar Scion. So she had only kind of started to chill out because she had gotten older and found somewhere to channel all of that energy and rage with the world. And I thought it would be interesting to have a god come in and like potentially stir that up or nudge her to lean into that calm, focused approach to all of that desire to settle scores.
Well, I mean, you know, we had that moment in the episode where Vidar thought he was Tyr for a second.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, poor JD. This is what happens when you're involved in too many Scion games and the Aesir keep coming up. It's very easy to mix up the gods, unfortunately. Don't ever tell the gods that.
Well, it was funny too because just before that we had the After On episode, and Heretic let us in on a little inside joke, and his tattoos related to Tyr, so it was kind of funny for those of us that were there for that. We'd be like, oh man, that tattoo's gonna come into play because suddenly we have a character change.
He just takes off a mask. Aha! I was Tyr all along.
That would be an interesting twist. What a twist!
Sounds very Loki-ish.
That's right.
It does, for sure.
So during the campaign, there was a lot going on in the chat. How much of that was enjoyable? How much of that was just crazy?
I loved all of what I saw. Sometimes it got to be too much, and I had to close the chat window in OBS so that I couldn't see it anymore, because otherwise I was going to get distracted. Mostly in the first episode, because y'all were silly. Was it Gay Baltimore Wolves or something like that?
Yep.
Very funny, but I couldn't look at the chat because I was trying to run something very high octane and very serious, and y'all kept making me laugh.
You didn't need to be laughing while you murdered Teddy. How dare you?
I mean, I did laugh just on the inside. I used my inside laugh. But yeah, so there were times where I had to close the chat, not because I didn't like it, but because I was trying to set a tone and I was terrified that you guys were going to throw me. And there were a couple times where you still did throw me, but thankfully the scene wasn't at a point where I couldn't like adapt, you know? Mm-hmm. So, but I loved it. Having an active chat makes running the show so much more worth it, and so much more enjoyable, because it lets me know what works and what doesn't, what translates well and what falls flat. I was lucky that I don't think we had too many flat moments this season, but yeah, I love having the active chat. I think it's great. And having people cheer us on gives, me life to come back every week, even when I'm exhausted from running every week and all the work that goes into the behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah, there were definitely conspiracy theories thrown out in the chat for sure.
Oh, I saw. I will neither confirm nor deny any of them. Thank you very much.
Very interesting.
I have a question for Gary.
Oh.
So you've been an SPC in one of my games where you got to know all the secrets and see all the behind the scenes things and help be plotty and help bring things to life. And you've been a PC where you got to see nothing until the day it happened. Which do you like better? What do you find more fun?
Oh, that's a tough one. I don't know how to say which one I prefer, because they're both different experiences in a way, and both have their own merits to it, where there's definitely a certain quality to being privy to everything, knowing everything that's going on behind the scenes, and getting to react to the players react to situations when you have additional knowledge to what's going on. There's definitely a bit of entertainment there, but also just getting to be the player and not know anything and venture into the darkness and seeing what's on the other side is just so phenomenal as well, that like it makes it hard to choose. I guess I would have to go with player, because that means I get to be here every week rather than just showing up every once in a while. But that's not to say I don't enjoy being an SPC. It's a lot of fun doing that as well.
Yeah, I kind of figured that might be your answer. But Sticker, you've also done that. So same question.
I was actually gonna say SPC.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah,
I
like-
would like to hear your reasoning.
Because I actively enjoy being a player. I also love the conversations I can have with you or here and there and be like, okay, or me sitting there watching them and being like, okay, I think we're gonna do this and I think we're gonna do this instead and whatsoever. Like listening to the group or the players plot and figure out what they want to do, and it's just for me to be on the other side like, okay, this is really cool that they're going to do this. Oh, I'm so excited to see what's going to happen, and I'm like, oh, I hope like I can make this even better of a game for them, and this is so exciting. And like it feels like you get to work with you get to be that I don't know, it's kind of like you get to see the party happening and you get to be like, okay, I hope I can make this so much better for them.
Yep.
So yeah.
Oh,
Well,
that's
like, yes,
awesome.
obviously I love being a player because, me, but also I like making other people's experiences better too, more than that.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah, and
Um,
you had a similar take as the Teddy kind of thing in our Wayfair game too, right? Where you were kind of a PC and then an SPC.
Yes, which was interesting because when we lost Teddy, I know I kept making the joke, but I was like, so this is how it felt for the Wayfair crew when they
I mean,
lost
to be fair,
Jillian.
the Wayfair crew went into things knowing that Jillian was already dead.
Sure.
And I don't think we're ever planning. I don't think, at least I hope, nobody expected Jillian to show back up suddenly when she did. So that was really fun. I liked getting to pull that bait and switch. I also loved the Teddy bait and switch. I thought that I was very proud of how that carried off.
It was so good.
That's actually.
Go ahead.
Oh,
That-
that was.
that was, I was gonna say that was actually the thing. I think I don't think I've ever had a player yell at me because I took us to break before, but Gary did that episode, and I will forever be proud of that moment.
No,
You were so into it. You
I was.
Yeah, you half deafened me. I was like, wow.
You just pull the rug out like that when things are going down.
I have to.
That was going to connect to my question I was going to ask you. How was running this like running Wayfair, or how is it different now that you've done the two, biggins?
So for me, Wayfarer was much more of a character drama. I felt like all of the like, I felt like the story was kind of the backdrop, right? It was kind of this is the stage that this is all happening on, but what we're really here for is the character and their interpersonal relationship. Like when I pitched the game, it was, this is a dysfunctional family road trip with horror elements. And that's exactly what it ended up being. I got to see these four mismatched hodgepodge people learn to be a unit and learn to cope with everything that they were going through as this little dysfunctional family. And then with Apotheosis, it was a much more externally focused. Like, yes, there was character development. Yes, there was amazing moments between all of the PCs, but the story was the story. The story wasn't necessarily the interpersonal drama, at least not until the end. It got very heavy at the end, but that is purely because you guys flipped the script on me. So I found that with Apotheosis, I was just as stressed out, but in very different ways, because I felt like I had to perform more with Apotheosis, whereas with Wayfarer, I had to present interesting situations and scenarios and then let the PCs have it. Like, I was just like, okay, so this is what's happening. Here are the heartstrings that I'm pulling. What are you going to do? Whereas with Apotheosis, it was everything's trying to kill you and the world is awful. Have fun. So
in that case, what would you say is like, through a storyteller perspective, was like your top 3 best moments in Apotheosis then?
oh my goodness. Well, we've already talked about one, which was killing Teddy and having you yell at me. That was amazing.
Yeah.
I was, oh goodness. I want to say that the scene where Vidar lectured you guys on Ragnarok and what it meant to propose sparing Stefan was probably one of the most intense scenes I've ever had the pleasure of having happen at any of my tables with any of my players. And funny enough, because she's only been on one episode, and I'm praying to every god and every pantheon out there that she comes back for season 2. V coming in as Artemis was like, I knew she was good, but blew me away. As far as stuff that is strictly with the PCs, y'all's reaction to thinking that Net was dead was pretty emotional and heart-wrenching and intense, and seeing Oliver and Coda come together to find this weird, quirky way to try to save her was really, really touching. Because there was a chance that if you guys didn't move fast enough, didn't come up with a way to try and feed the apples to her, that she was dead. And so I thought it was really cute that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, 10 episodes, they were all really good, so it's hard to pick favorites. Like, I feel a little bit like a jerk for having to pick anything. But if I absolutely had to pick, I would say that those are like my top 4.
Yeah, well, that's how I felt the other day when you asked me, like, hey, what's your favorite NPC? I was like, how am I supposed to pick? How am I supposed to do that?
I was just curious because, like, everybody else had kind of told me theirs. So I was just like, oh, yeah, I haven't heard from you.
This was just so hard.
I know that each episode you do like highs and lows. Was there any like lows that you had, since we talked about the high moments?
To be honest with you, I think the only lows we ever had were like technical issues. When Damien couldn't be there for a session, when Sticker couldn't be there for a session. I think that's kind of it. I don't remember any big low moments. It was always like things that were out of our control. It was or were because I screwed up. Technical issues or circumstances beyond our control, like Chris having a migraine during the first like really, really heavy roleplay episode that we had. And then Damien having to be gone because of a death in the family, like that sort of thing. That was all. But I don't, you guys might remember, but I don't remember any like genuinely big lows outside of like those like weird extenuating circumstances.
I don't really have anything other than that as well. Just like the random like technical things that we couldn't help.
Which shocked the heck out of me, because running for Damien's really intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
So I was always braced every week for him to be disappointed in something. So the fact that he never was probably the biggest sigh of relief I breathed every week. Was one, when the session was done and in the can, and I could relax a little bit for a couple of days before I had to immediately start jumping into the next thing. And 2, when I could get past Damien on the list, and he was like, "No, I loved it. I have no complaints." And I was just like, "Oh, thank God."
Playing with him is intimidating because like this is a man who knows what he's doing. I'm just like, how am I supposed to measure up? Jeez. This guy's killing it.
There are times where he knows the game better than I do, and I'm like, oh god. But he has thankfully been very accepting of like the homebrew and my tendency to fudge rules for better story. So
Yeah, and we'll talk to him tomorrow. So
Oh yeah, we're gonna
more
get
on that.
him in here to confirm or deny anything that you all have said.
Yeah, so get stressed again because we'll have him here to grill you.
Oh, I'm not
Just
stressed
kidding.
about the conversation. I was stressed about having to run for him. The hard part's done. He can say whatever he wants now. It's in the can.
Just comes
Fair
on tomorrow, being like, I lied. I hate the whole thing. He's like, damn it,
Yeah,
how could you?
dare you
How
exist?
could you?
Okay, well, that would probably make me cry. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
I have a question, actually, for our hosts.
Uh-oh.
Wait, hold
Flipping
on.
the
I think
table.
we're
Not allowed.
yeah. T's supposed to go the other way. So it's supposed to roll this way.
Too bad. Y'all have been
get 'em,
spilling
get 'em.
tea and talking about me for 10 episodes. It's my turn.
Oh,
Do you guys enjoy making me cry? Because that happens a lot with this show. You guys, every time you have like pre-record time or recording after you've cut, because I listen to the raw files, there's always something like really ridiculously sweet and nice said, and it always makes me cry. And you two are always prompting it.
well, I can't speak for Solomon, but I can speak for me. Yes.
And I can speak for me. Yes.
Okay, well that.
Yeah,
Fine.
no. So here's the thing. We genuinely enjoy your presence, and we genuinely think that you are a wonderful person. And sometimes we feel that maybe you don't think that way, so we're just trying to help you out because we genuinely do love you very much.
Oh well, I love you guys too. Even though you make me cry almost every week.
I just like to get back at you for all the pain you cause the players. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it's
Fine
our
on
chance to
behalf.
make you feel.
Yeah, how do you like it?
It's a very different kind of stick.
But yeah, like we just we do all of those things that we've said and all of those things we've prompted from the other people are because we firmly believe in that. So, and we knew they were going to answer that way. Like I only ask those questions because I know how they're going to answer. And I want you to know.
You're very lucky that they end up answering that way and they're not just like jerks about it, because that would suck so hard. Thankfully, everybody at HHS is amazing. So
yeah, I actually had a question for our antagonists, but I cut it only because we were kind of low on time. But my question was going to be something like, "So how about that BP? She's so terrible, isn't she?" Just to get them to like talk about you. Yeah.
You tried doing to me like my first time on here. I was like, I'm gonna just be aggressively kind instead, just to show you up.
Yes, actually, Gary, that was probably the best thing you could do when we started spilling the tea in the first episode, and you just turned it into like the most aggressively kind thing ever. I was like, okay, that's how this is going to be.
Nice things about BP, and I'm sitting there listening to the raw files and just weeping.
Good. Then we did it right. Then we did it.
did.
Oh my god.
You did. You'll never see me cry like live, but I will happily go and cry alone.
Well, any other questions toward us or other people in general?
I would like to know from the hosts, because we spend so many of these shows listening to what the cast has to say and how the cast feels about things. And we had a little bit of a hint at the beginning of this episode, but I want to know from both of you, like, what was your favorite episode and why?
Great question.
Well, you already know my answer. I actually just really loved the final episode because it was nice. It was fun to have that nail biting moment and things to come down to the buzzer as to whether what the band wanted would happen, or if they would have to deal with their failure, as it were.
Face your failure.
Baby Driver episode.
Oh
That's the
yeah,
one.
that's
Because
a great episode.
that was a great episode, and the part about it that I liked so much was the way that the players were not just working together, but also coming up with innovative ways to deal with the situations that were on hand. You know, not just the typical thing, oh, well, I'm going to do this or that. That's in my wheelhouse, and I'm going to roll these dice, but like trying to think outside of the box, including
Mhm.
hotboxing. But like
That was a good one. That was
legitimately,
a good one.
yeah, like legitimately trying to think about what was happening and come to solutions to the problems and like work together as a team to solve these things that were well outside of their ability necessarily right offhand. So yeah, that would be my favorite episode.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
really good.
I gotta give props to the sticker on the hotboxing. When that happened, I was like, oh, that is such a good idea. Just
That was
KO'd him on the spot with that.
that was a brilliant move. I was just like, I don't even know what to do with this. This is so good that I don't know what to say. I would like to know what Sticker's favorite episode was and why.
My favorite episode and why.
I have a theory as to which one it is, but I want to see if yours matches up.
Huh.
I'm gonna ask you too, Gary, so you better start thinking.
Oh no.
I don't know. It's kind of tough because I really enjoyed when we went to the what's her name? The Sybil. I really
Mhm.
enjoyed that. But that's tough because I really enjoyed the Sybil, and I think the Sybil episode ended up turning into Baby Driver, right? Or what's that before?
That was the Sybil Driver was beforehand. Baby Driver, I think, was the next episode because you guys had to
Yeah.
go meet up with
Yeah, I
Net.
think this one after.
You started this. It was the episode following the Sybil that was the episode
Copy.
where you guys worked together. Yeah.
Yeah, because that whole just general thing was nice to finally have all of us do the thing successfully. But I'm a little bit of a softie when her and Net.
Yeah, that's what I kind of figured.
Yeah.
I figured it would be the episode that Net nearly died and you got to save her and kind of inadvertently became a thing.
Yeah.
I kind of figured that would be it, but I was curious if I was wrong.
No, you're right. And just them
uh,
talking, and every single time Net would be like, whoever said that you're these things, like, that's not true, right? And her just being like, yeah, I know it's not true.
Gary, what was your favorite
Yes.
episode and why?
They were all so good, but I think some of my favorite moments are when Oliver gets taken out of his comfort zone. So I gotta give it to the episode where we go to Damon's farm, because that was like him getting trebucheted out of his comfort zone. It was so good. So probably that one.
I was hoping one of the two of you would say that one, but hey, good job. Keep
It
going,
was a
Gary. Keep thinking
thought.
about it.
I mean, that's the crux of it. It's just like the whole thing with the nymphs was just super fun, entertaining from like watching the other players interact, and then Oliver having a mental breakdown effectively because he doesn't know how to compute.
I loved that. That episode was. I didn't plan for the nymphs to play that big of a role. They were kind of like, I knew that they were going to be there. I knew that the apples were there. I figured you guys would be at the farm for maybe 10 to 15 minutes out of the whole episode. And then I remembered Oliver and I went, oh, well, now I have to bring the nymphs in.
Yeah,
And
of
they
course.
have
I'm
to be
glad you
more
did.
prominent. And getting to see the difference between how Oliver and Chris handled it. And getting the confirmation that Sarah's not straight was great. It's never explicitly said out loud, but finding out that she's at the very least bi was very cool. And I loved the fact that Coda abstained because she already was in her feels for Net, even though nothing had happened between them. I thought that was super cute.
Yeah.
I think my favorite Oliver moment, and there's so many, but I think my favorite Oliver moments really were when he like lectured the band on like theories presented in literature. I thought that was great. The constant audiobook references, and the coming up on the fly with a podcast was great.
Oh, that was good.
That was very fun.
You got like you presenting the opportunity and everybody else just sort of picking it up and running with it. I was just like, we now have to name the podcast. I need to get with an artist to at least do like a cover art for a Beiged and Confused book. Because I have, or not a Beige and Confused book, but a Beige Squad book.
Beige Squad, yeah.
So there's so many good moments, and I think things that are iconic and are going to forever be referenced in this and other games are probably came from you guys just winging it and like shit posting essentially in the middle of the session.
Yeah.
So
I will say what makes it really easy for me to do various Oliver-esque things is that literature is my field of study. So like any other character, I probably wouldn't be able to pull things out nearly as well as I do with Oliver, or at least I would have to research way more often. So like I'm actively thinking like, yeah, okay, these are all like books I've read for classes and stuff. Oliver would love them. Of course, Oliver would be able to like just tie Derrida into this random conversation, no problems about it. And meanwhile, I'm like, well, this is my field of study and I enjoy it. I'm sitting here trying to read Difference by Derrida. I'm like, what? You're not making any sense, dude. What? So two different thought processes, but like still the same kind of like studying field of study for both myself and Oliver. So I get to use that to my advantage.
Yeah. My favorite Coda moment. Oh goodness, there have been so many. I think my favorite Coda moment was actually the morning after Net nearly died. And Coda had this whole like, you need to be careful with you because I care about you moment. Because at the beginning of the season, I would have told you that something like that would never happen with that character. So getting to see how far she had come and like making herself vulnerable, even if it was really awkward, was really cute. And just like very impactful for me because I liked seeing the growth that the character had gone through. And then seeing it even come even further full circle when she was interacting with her mom and being like really respectful and like actually called Bastet mom. I was like, oh my God, my heart. So those are my favorite moments before anybody asks, because I know somebody will.
I want to ask what about the other two players, but I think it would be better for them to be there for
Tomorrow.
it. So I'm not.
Yeah, it's tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll leave that for the next half of the finale recording of the first season of Afternoon.
You'll just have to listen to it. Womp womp.
Sounds like the perfect
Unfortunate for
segue.
you. Yeah, sounds like the perfect spot for us to go ahead and wrap it up there. So, it's been a pleasure speaking to all of you. These episodes are dropped Thursdays at noon for the $5 plus tier on the Patreon. They are released to the public 1 month later, so everyone who's listening, think about subscribing so you can be up to date with your talk news for Hallowed Haven Studios. Thanks so much for coming to talk with us, BP and Gary and Sticker.
Thank you
Thanks
for
for
having me.
having us. Yes.
And
Pleasure.
thank you all for listening. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Good morning, Hallowed Haven family. This is After Dawn, the show where we sit down to have a cup of coffee with the cast, crew, and creators behind the Hallowed Haven Studios productions. I'm Saul, and I'm joined by my co-host, Scott.
Yes. Hello. I'm Scott, and today we're talking about Scion Apotheosis, Episode 10, the season finale. This is part 2, if you're paying attention, to our sort of end of season recap, where we talk to the cast and crew. We are talking today to some special people, but mostly we're going to cover more of what went on in that last episode, where the group of the Beige and Confused squad faced off against a bunch of gods to decide the fate for Stefan, who, you know, was a bad guy, but then maybe not so bad of a guy, right? So that's what we're talking about today. I thought it was great. It was a very fun episode to listen to and hear the arguments back and forth. But my opinion is not the only one here. What are your thoughts there, Saul?
I agree. I always love to see the different pantheons interact, and especially whenever they are interacting not just with each other, but with the different scions of other pantheons, and and I like seeing how each scion went and talked to the different gods that were present to try to get them on their side for the vote. Well, today we're going to be doing a little bit more of a different format where we have a much shorter brewing section and more of the hard-hitting questions of drinking the cup and then spilling the tea, of course. So let's go ahead and talk to our guests. We have Storyteller Bloody Porcelain and player characters Damien and Cyan. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello. BB, welcome to our show again. Are you ready for more grilling?
I'm always ready.
Very good. Saul, you want to ask a question?
I would love to. BP, let's talk about what you do to get in the right mindset to run streams and game sessions, especially for like the big finale where there's a lot of really high stakes and a lot of really powerful players all at one point.
Oh goodness, that's a big. Okay, so typical sessions, I tend to go back and listen to the session before them, and while I'm reviewing my notes to make sure I didn't miss anything, to kind of refresh myself on what happened and put myself back in the same headspace I was in when we finished. So that I can kind of pick up smoothly and go from there. And that's usually happening while I'm doing things like putting together stat blocks if I need them, or making a list of the story beats and points that I think we might hit, and I know we need to hit in order to keep on schedule. For for the finale specifically, that obviously wasn't an option because it would have required going and listening to the entire season. I listened to like the second half of last episode, and I listened to the whole playlist from beginning to end. I made a bunch of notes on each of the gods that was going to be on the council, reread their little blurbs in the book, and looked up some stories about them on, Googled some stuff. And that's kind of where, like, I just sort of crammed as much as I could into as short a period of time as possible in prep. And then I pulled in each of the parent gods into calls and was just like, this is what you know about the people who are on the council, and this is the advice that I will give you for each of them, and you can all pick which ones you think make the most sense for your character to like know anything about. You can decide how you want to feel about the decision that the PCs have made. You do not have to be supportive. And that was kind of that.
So a lot of prep and understandably so, with so many players all at once and so much writing on something as simple as a vote.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds really simple, right? But it's not. There's nothing simple about having that many people in a room at a table with wildly differing opinions and backgrounds, and trying to get enough of them to agree on something, especially something as extreme as this. So yeah, no, I went into it knowing that there was nothing simple about what they were being asked to do, and it wasn't going to be easy and straightforward, and they were going to have to work for it. So that meant that I had to work for it. So.
Makes sense. So, Damien, how much did you enjoy playing Chris through this campaign? How does he rank in your Hallowed Haven characters that you've played so far?
I mean, my other character, Charles, was a lot of fun because he was a bit of a loudmouth, sort of brash dickhead. But I really enjoyed Chris. And I think the reason I enjoyed Chris more is because the banter that we had as a party was so exceptionally good. And role-playing is what makes me get up in the morning. I love role-playing. And I think that it allowed me to develop Chris as a character by bouncing him off other people more in this campaign than the previous one. So, yeah, Chris was a lot of fun to play.
I mean, yeah, the banter was basically half of the reason we were all listening, right? It was good.
The banter was fabulous. It really was. I think everybody just had their own little niche that they fulfilled perfectly. And we bounced off each other really, really well, considering we hadn't role-played together before. I thought it was exceptionally good.
Yeah.
It definitely was.
Yeah, I would agree with that statement. Scion, how about you in playing Sarah?
I mean, this is the first character I played for Hallowed Havens, but I had a really good time. I mean, I'd been trying to find a Scion game to play since I knew it existed. So it was really fun to play and just be a part of, really.
Kind of wild to think you almost weren't in it because you didn't apply before the cutoff time.
It's true, I didn't.
Interesting. So you missed the cutoff date? Yeah. We could not. But you missed the cutoff date? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I closed applications, and I was in the middle of doing interviews, and I had interviewed 2 people that Scion knew. I mean, we'd met before, but like I think we'd talked like twice. We didn't really get to know each other at all during that time. And then we sort of like went our separate ways, and I didn't think I'd ever hear from her again. And then we had 2 people in common that had applied to the game, and one of them was just like, "Hey, I'm talking to Cyan, if you remember her, and she's really interested, but she missed the time. Is there any way that she could still apply?" And I said, "Well, I've closed it, but I guess because I've still got a bunch of interviews to do, she'll have some time as long as she gets it in like today." And like less than an hour later, I had an application from her, set up a call, and the rest, as they say, is history. And now I can't imagine how season 1 would have happened without her here. So
exactly, we're glad that worked out.
Literally the driving force behind like the biggest plot twist in the whole season. So
yeah, there was no pressure at all there.
None.
I mean, there wasn't. It was all her idea. It wasn't me. I didn't decide to save Stefan. That was all her.
Very good. Well, BB, how I'm sorry, this question is worded funny, but what was your favorite god to RP? Aside from Morgan, I guess. It was brought up in chat.
Yeah, I noticed that I'm not allowed to answer the Morgan, and I think it's because everybody knows that she would be that she's probably going to always be my go-to answer.
Yeah, she's the easy answer.
Oh, goodness.
We don't take those here.
Yeah, we don't take easy. No easy answers around here.
I didn't get to portray too many others. I mean, like the last episode, I portrayed a bunch. I would have to say that it was a toss-up. No pun intended. Between Athena and Frigg and Ganesha. Ganesha mostly because it was just fun to play that type of character. He's kind of jovial and kind-hearted, not hugely snarky like a lot of the other gods are. And I don't have an issue playing an asshole when I need to, but I really am not very good at being mean to people. So I struggled a little bit with like Huang Di and such, but Frigg I didn't like at first when we first started the episode and she started talking, she was doing like the direct addressals and whatever, but when I got to do the one-on-one scene with Stefan, I felt like I kind of hit my stride with her and she was a lot of fun. I got to imagine like how I would feel if somebody hurt my kid, or any of my kids' friends. I got very, very angry very, very quickly. So she was fun. And Athena was fun because Damien's just a blast to roleplay with. That was a great scene, and it's fun to kind of get to settle in and chill out, which is what I felt like I was doing with her. I got to be more thoughtful and introspective with Athena, which was cool.
That was a really great conversation that we had, actually. I thought it was kind of very fulfilling, very kind of respectful on both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. I was a little worried seeing how you were with Artemis. I was like, oh my God, if he comes at Athena this way, this is not going to go well. I was so glad that you didn't.
It's only because Artemis said to me, don't come that way, Athena. She doesn't like aggression, so don't be like that with her. So I thought, I'm going to step off that gas pedal completely.
Good. Which is funny because that, like, I didn't say specifically don't be aggressive with her. What I talked about when I was giving insight was Athena doesn't like people who resort to aggression as their first answer to a problem. So she's in a weird position where she probably doesn't approve, though she'd never say it out loud. She probably doesn't approve of the way the Aesir handle Loki Scions. But she also wouldn't approve of how Stefan reacted to that aggression. Like, it was just aggression feeds into aggression, which is a nasty cycle that she wouldn't be okay with. So I didn't quite say don't be aggressive with her. I just said she doesn't dig aggression and be careful, keep that in mind when you talk to her.
Which is what I did. I mean, I didn't go in with that aggression. I thought if she, from what you said, I thought the best tack is to go in with like an olive branch, be sort of like friendly without any aggression whatsoever.
Oh yeah, no, I what I'm saying is I didn't tell V to put it that way. That's just how she interpreted it, which I thought was very cool. So
understood.
Yeah.
All right. Looks like we are getting on to drinking the cup. So let's go ahead and start with another question for BP. BP, we know the Fenris Wolves played a big part in this season, and we know that our antagonists were very active during the campaign. Would you like to go ahead and give us a little bit of insight into the Wolves and their activities that maybe we didn't get to see on screen?
No.
How dare you?
Wow.
That would be spoilery. Absolutely not. You guys want to learn
that
more?
question, Ted.
Y'all want to learn more about the Wolves? You better you better convince the PCs to pursue that in between all of the other things they have to do next season.
Ooh, okay. That's a fair answer. That's a fair answer.
Yeah, we'll take that.
Yeah, if you didn't see it on screen, it's because I didn't want you to. Or the PCs didn't pursue it in a way that would allow people to see things.
Fair enough. Shifting focus, Damien and Cyan, what are your feelings on the Wolves as antagonists throughout the entirety of the campaign?
Big, scary, furry, big teeth. The great antagonists, really. The apparently allergic to fire, but up until this point, there was a dude who could control it. So
most things are. So,
well, then we need to use it more. All right. Look, I keep saying firebombs, but we barely even made them like the second to last episode.
Look, you made them, you had the materials, you guys just decided not to get into a fight. I can't help that. Every time I presented the Wolves with you for the second half of the season, y'all either ran away or decided not to fight them because you were trying to save their general. Like, what do you want from me?
There were children present, okay? For this.
Yeah, when we were getting Lily and that out, it was very much we have to protect the kids, not engage in a fight. And I think if we had gone for the fight, we would have had to have left the kids behind somewhere, which meant unless we had somebody watching them, one of the wolves could have snuck around the back and kind of killed them. So it was very much the kids are the priority. We have to get away.
I'm again not complaining. I presented opportunities and you guys made different choices, and that's kind of the whole point of the game. So
look, it's fine.
You don't get to pout at me that you didn't get to blow things up if you're the one actively running away from the fights where you could have blown things up.
I don't think anyone's pouting at you, are they?
Cyan is. She has been all day.
I'm not pouting. Okay, I'm not pouting. I'm just saying between the seasons, someone needs to get a hold of a rocket launcher, and it might be me.
A rocket launcher? That's a pretty extreme ask.
Okay.
the place you'd most likely be able to get that, they're not very happy with you right now. So
Yeah, makes sense.
Mm-hmm. That tracks. Damien, does Chris still consider Stefan his brother after all this?
That's an interesting point, and I saw that question in Discord, and I've been thinking about it for the last few hours. I mean, he is upset that he didn't get taken into the Greek pantheon so that he could have been there with Chris. He is like bitterly upset about that, like properly upset. I mean, there are lots of things that basically say he isn't Chris's brother. The only thing that is that we are both children of Loki. But now it's like children from the same home have been sent to different foster parents. When are we ever going to see each other? That we have different parents. We're going to be brought up differently, TM. So he feels very, very, very sad about the fact that the Greeks didn't take him.
Yeah. On the plus side, at least he is of a pantheon that one of your own band is part of, so there's better chances of at least crossing paths.
Yeah, very true.
Very true.
Yeah.
You all
Scion,
were told that you would get to visit him when he's imprisoned. So it's not like he's completely off the table. You just have to find time to be there.
And I hope we'll get to a point when he will be out of prison on his own recognizance and able to take part in things a little bit more.
Quite possibly. You might have something to do with that.
I see there being episodes like in a lot of TV shows where just a scene where it's Chris and Stefan in prison on either sides of like a glass, talking to each other.
Yeah.
Talking in a phone thing. But anyway, speaking of prisons and stuff, Scion, how does Sarah feel about now having to fight against Gwen, somebody that she had worked with professionally?
Not quite happy, but I mean, it's more like this is something she's resigned herself into having to do because it was Gwen's choice to not, come back to the light side. So now the only other option is to just, take her out, even though she doesn't want to. So
more firebombs.
Yeah, probably. When in doubt, just firebombs.
Those are words to live by.
I agree.
Now, this is for both of our players. Let's talk about the end of the story arc. How worried were you that the vote was just not going to go in your favor?
Very.
So I'm guessing there was a lot of anxiety when there were all those nays that were going out right in a row, huh?
Oh yeah, like when I was talking during that whole part of the session, I was fairly certain that my voice was just shaking like a chihuahua in the wintertime. Like it was crazy tense.
I think Chris was worried, Damien less so. But yeah, Chris was worried that he was going to lose the closest person he has to a brother after only meeting him less than a week earlier.
Yeah, that's true. That timeline was pretty quick.
Yeah. Interesting to me how the players shook out on who was super, super nervous and who was a little bit more relaxed.
Yeah, it's true.
Because from what I'm hearing, Gary and Cyan were my nervous Nellies, and Damien and Sticker kind of relaxed a little bit. Sticker because ADD took over and she had a true blue coda moment and got distracted by a cat, but
yeah, it sounds about right.
Yeah.
So BP, I have a question about the vote and the gods themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have preset criteria for how the PCs could win the gods over, or was it just all fluid based on how they talked to each god and what they played with, like Ganesha and playing with luck, or Athena not being super aggressive?
Well, I had some things that I knew would help tip the balance in their favor if they approached it correctly. A lot of it had to do with who went to talk to which god. because personality types for some of the PCs I knew would clash pretty hard. As far as having preset criteria of things that they had to do, not really. It was more of a, you have to approach things correctly. You have to come at them with the right attitude. You have to show the proper respect for certain ones and not kowtow to others. So it was very much like a fluid kind of give and take situation, but I did present like bits of advice that their parents could give them to help nudge things in the right, in this direction or that direction. And then I just sort of played it by ear when the scenes came. Like, Chris could have approached Athena very, very respectfully and still said the wrong thing. It's not like just being non-aggressive was enough. He also had to make a good enough argument. So had Chris shown up and been super aggressive but not been convincing, then she wouldn't have voted his way, and they would have lost. The Ganesha and Luck thing was not something I had planned. I knew he had to be spoken to a certain way, and that he had the biggest chance of being the most reasonable out of most of the ones that they spoke to. Well, maybe not the biggest, but one of the most reasonable. But Sarah leaned a lot into Luck while also being very respectful and kind of giddy to see him, which I thought was pretty cute. So, I flipped a coin, and they just so happens that they got lucky.
Speaking of the interactions, Damien, the chat wanted to talk to you about your interaction with Artemis and whether or not those kinds of heated sort of verbal sparring matches actually give you energy or make you feel bad because you're supposed to be an ally.
They give me energy. They don't make me feel bad. They make me feel, well, they make Chris feel like he's taken an active part in the situation and he's not just kowtowing, like towing the line or anything else like that. For Damien, I don't necessarily go into all of my role-playing situations looking for confrontation, but every now and again, as long as it goes in an interesting direction and doesn't turn into a verbal slanging match or just a straight fight after a few sort of ad hominem attacks, then I think they're very, very worthwhile.
Nice. So you don't shy away from the verbal conflicts as long as they go somewhere, essentially.
Yeah, I don't shy away from them at all, but I don't like gratuitous ones. As long as they kind of serve a point, I think they're worthwhile. And I think it did. The one that I had with Artemis really, really did. So I'm pleased with how that went.
Very good. Now, Scion, we did hear that you approached Ganesha properly, but was there any gods like you would have interacted with that Sarah would have interacted with but didn't get a chance to?
Probably Athena as well, but I feel like so many other people also wanted to talk to her, and that was kind of stated in character as well, that she was like, I'll just go talk to the one that no one else has mentioned yet.
Ooh. She was like, there's an avenue there. I need to take it.
Mm-hmm.
And make sure that Oliver doesn't trip over himself talking to her.
Well, I mean, it's a good thing you went that direction because it swayed the vote.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, also, too, Vidar said, I hope you find some luck. You're going to need it, or something along those lines. And I was like, the god of luck. Okay, sure. I'll take that one literally.
I don't even think that was planned. That's actually kind of funny. I'll have to ask JD if that was on purpose on his part. Or if it was just a line that he threw out and it happened to work out in your favor.
Throwaway statements that become plot points are always great, honestly.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
I was just listening to directions. That was really it.
Yeah, I mean, how can she tell what isn't supposed to, like one of those, I'm saying this to you, wink, wink kind of statements versus he just said something while he was walking away.
Yeah, exactly.
So, BP.
Yes.
How many, ropes did you throw to your PCs during the campaign? If you could elucidate that without like fully spoiling things for season 2.
What do you mean by ropes?
Just various like plot points or like little comments that other people might have said that might have given them something else to look into, like not just the Fenris rules, but looking into other things.
Oh, you mean like how many plot threads did I dangle?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, that
goodness. I don't know that I've kept account. I know that there are a handful that I put in front of them that they either ignored or decided not to pursue or to pursue later. There had to be at least 5 or 6 ones on top of the wolves that they just didn't go for, which is fine. Like I try to seed in more than you can possibly do in one season because it gives people a reason to come back. I'm like, if you guys want to like, you know, resolve all of these other things, then you have to show up for next season. So
yeah.
Can't resolve all the plot points in one season.
well, right. And it also, you know, it leaves room for the PCs to be able to like make plans between seasons, and for me to pitch another story at them next season that actually makes sense and doesn't seem completely out of left field.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So I did something very similar in Wayfair, where throughout the season I would drop in little hints and plots for you guys to follow and see which way you would go. So
yeah. Well, at least fortunately, Hallowed Haven doesn't have like the Netflix problem, right, where you're going to get canceled before you can actually follow up on them.
Yeah,
no,
okay.
I mean, provided that everybody is still interested, or at least I get enough interest, season 2 will happen and everything will be great, and I'll have, you know, the opportunity to bring the players back and beat them with more sticks, so to speak.
Deal even more emotional damage to them.
Emotional damage.
Emotional damage. So, speaking of the players, Damien and Cyan, are there any SPCs that you would like to have your characters interact with during the interlude between seasons?
For
I would
me,
also like to know this. It'll
personally-
make planning easier.
That's why
Well,
we
I
threw it
mean,
in.
my favorite NPC, of course, was the gas station attendant
Oh my
that
God.
gave Oliver some lip that one time.
He didn't even have a name. He was just a random dude that I threw in because I needed somebody there.
You had
All right,
to
BP.
expect this, BP. You know how this goes. You've been doing this long enough.
I would say if you've been at this for this long and you didn't realize that was going to happen,
How he managed to supplant Mr. Cat as the favorite NPC is beyond me.
Also, Damon. That one's pretty good.
Yeah.
He's the one that's doing the Scion life right.
Plus, you have to help him, unionize his nymphs or something.
Scion of Dionysus Weed Farmer, go, go.
How about you, Damien? Anyone you want Chris to talk to a lot? I imagine that he probably wants to try to get time to talk to Stefan.
Yeah, I mean, definitely he wants to get time to talk to Stefan. I think that's pretty much number one on my list, without a shadow of a doubt. But also, I agree with the whole Damon thing. I loved the time spent there, and I felt like I got to show a little bit of Chris's personality a little bit more while I was at Damon's farm. Just different things, you know, with the nymphs and the grilling and stuff like that. And I liked that. I liked being able to just expand my character a little bit more. And I think Damon offered that. So I'd like to speak to him. But also, I think someone that I don't think anyone's mentioned yet is the Sibyl, the Oracle. Want to be able to speak to her again. Not even just so that I can find out my future or anything like that, but just a conversation, because she thinks it's 92?
Yeah, she thinks she's back in the 90s, yeah.
Right. So I want to be able to just chat with her more over a protracted period of time, I think.
Recognize that protracted period of time becomes even more time in the real time.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You're like, oh, I was only there for a couple of days talking to her. Oh, it's been several years outside? Oh, wow, okay. This is the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe happening over here.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Hope Chris is willing to give up that amount of time. Jesus.
Yeah, I think he would be, because time would pass very slowly where he is, so he wouldn't actually age over those 2 years or however long it took.
Correct. I guess it depends on if he has enough time between the seasons to be able to pull that off.
True.
Yeah.
Possibly. I have to talk to the players and see kind of what their feels are on what they're planning on doing versus what needs doing. So we will see.
Comes back to season 2. It's 1 year later, and for Chris, it's been 2 days.
Yeah.
Hey, look, if the players come to me and say we want our characters to take a year off, I mean, they're going to be doing Scion things during that year, but there's a possibility they could weasel out of having to do a ton of work during that time, or they'll all be given like separate assignments essentially by their parents.
I want my band to kick off again. That's what I want in a downtime.
I imagine Chris has got a lot of interesting things to sing about now.
Yeah, right. He's got a lot of lyric ideas.
Just some epic metal coming out,
He might have to make a concept album.
Exactly.
Make a rock opera. That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Might have to see if he can bring his mom in to do like a sort of a collab.
A cameo.
It's true. And Athena as well. She's the patron, like goddess of the arts as well. So get Athena in. Get both of them in.
Boy.
But not Apollo.
Apollo did right by Chris. Took him out on a little adventure. They had fun.
Actually, yes, I would love to spend a little bit more time with Apollo. Thank you for reminding me. Yes, you're right.
Oh God, I'm gonna have to find somebody to play Apollo now.
Ooh. I mean, there's lots of good voices here in Hallowed Haven, as I mentioned before.
There are a large number of very talented people.
Speaking of voices, at this point in time, we'd actually like to turn the tables over to the rest of you to ask questions for BP if you have them, or I guess BP can ask us questions if she has them.
I already asked you questions yesterday.
I know, that's why I had to throw that little
Yeah, we
thing
were
in
a
there.
little bit shocked by that. I suppose we're open to being questioned as well.
I guess so.
Yeah, I actually have questions, and we kind of touched on this already with regards to the vote. I'm really curious as to the level of work that you put in, and what you specifically wanted from us at the very, very end with regards to the work that we had to do to convince the gods. Because from what I was looking at, what I thought about is you would have had to have written like a list of pro statements and a list of con statements. And depending on how many of those that we tick off with each of the individual gods would dictate which way they vote. That's how I saw it. And that's how I would have probably approached it. Is that how you did it, or?
Not quite a list. Like I said, I kind of figured out a rough idea of each personality. I gave each god in their own individual like starting stance, how they felt about things going into the situation. And I made like a general note of how hard it would be to convince them. Some of them I only gave stuff that you definitely don't want to do when you approach them, but otherwise I was very open. Some of them I gave specifics on things you needed to address and touch on. And obviously like the Aesir were kind of a non-starter. So I just like there was a very, very small chance that Frigg may have been convinced, but it was so minuscule that it was nearly impossible. Just because of the history and everything going into that.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
So on the gods that we actually spoke to and convinced, how well do you think we convinced them? Like barely or really well, or how do you feel?
Well, Ganesha was, and again, well, I guess pun intended on this one, was definitely a toss-up. Like, Sarah approached him well enough that he didn't dislike her, but he wasn't truly convinced. He wasn't so put off that he was automatically going to say no, but he wasn't so convinced that he was going to say yes, which is why I went with the coin flip. That, and because she leaned so hard into him being the god of luck, that I was just like, all right, screw it. Let's leave it up to luck. Let's make it a chance thing. As far as, oh goodness, with Athena, it was, yeah, I don't know. It's really hard to like explain because a lot of this was just me going with the vibe and the moment, based on what I knew about each personality.
Gotcha.
You know, I knew that certain ones would be much, much harder to convince. Some of them were kind of already erring towards voting for Mercy. Not many, very, very few, but they were kind of there. And would have taken a very small nudge. Oddly enough, one of them would have been the easiest to convince, and none of you talked to her. So that was really interesting to me.
Can you say who that was?
I can. I have to look at her name on my list so that I don't mispronounce it. Because I will if I'm given the chance. Anahita. Because she's a life goddess. Like, her whole thing is life. She doesn't like the destruction of it. So had you guys had, it really wouldn't have mattered who went to her. If somebody had gone to her and specifically said, you know, please vote our way, she would have. And I mean, she did ultimately because you made a good argument, but during your opening statements,
yeah,
Quetzalcoatl probably would have leaned towards Mercy. And, you know, y'all just kind of got lucky that you got the most merciful of all of the Aztecs on board, but he's still an Aztec. So I don't know if I answered your question. I'm sorry.
You did. No, you did. Thank you.
Okay.
I want to know if you had like any other godly parents that you were considering for us in the beginning.
I had a whole list for like each of you. Like I went through and I looked for who was the most likely for each person. I basically, I made a list of all of the gods in the book. And then I, on like a spreadsheet, and then I had each of the PCs at the top, across the top. And I just went through and I, you know, put X's in the boxes for ones that were hard no, and like Y's for the ones that were like yes, and M for maybe. And I just sort of went through and narrowed it down as I went. You guys specifically, Chris was a toss up between Athena and Artemis, and I just thought that Artemis would make the better choice for his personality. Although Osiris was also on there, and I think I ultimately decided against him mostly because you guys already had Coda.
True.
And I didn't want a ton of overlap. Especially with Chris already being from the Aesir, I was kind of trying to toe that line of not going too heavy in any one direction. Goodness. Sarah, I'm looking at my list because I've still got it. Sarah, you had the least number of options. Because she had such a very particular personality type. And you had crossed off 3 of the pantheons that I thought would be the easiest to pair you up with. Which I could have easily found somebody in the celestial bureaucracy or the Loa for you, and you weren't interested in either of them. So, I had Vidar, Tyr, and Horus for Sarah, and Vidar just won out because of her history, the way that she was beforehand, like when she was growing up. She seemed like somebody who was always going to seek out vengeance and to try and right wrongs, even if it was kind of like a postscript righting of wrongs.
Okay, all right. Another question. What it seems like Oliver kind of made Huang Di upset. What was it that did so?
He didn't really make him upset. Huang Di's just always an asshole.
Oh, okay.
And Oliver, like he was always going to be really hard to approach. I actually, if I had to pick a PC to approach Huang Di, it would have been Sarah, because Sarah's usually the most even keel. at least on the surface. Sarah's always struck me as somebody who has spent enough of her life not being even keel and not being controlled, exerting much self-control, that now that she's an adult, she's learned how to clamp down on her impulses. So I really thought that if anybody should go and talk to him, it would be Sarah. But he was always going to be difficult to convince because he's just a jerk. Like, he's just genuinely not a good person. So, yeah. It wasn't that he did anything specific. It's just that he didn't do the very difficult right thing to get him to like him. So.
And also, how many times did someone almost die during this season?
Oh, goodness. Am I including NPCs?
Yeah.
Yeah, if I'm including NPCs, I think I can count at least 6 or 7 times that somebody almost died. It may not have always been obvious, but there were a lot of times where you guys kind of skirted the line pretty hard, and I got genuinely nervous that I was going to have to kill a PC, or that an NPC was going to die because of a PC's decisions.
And just to be clear, we shy upon killing PCs on Hallowed.
Well, it's not so much we shy upon it as like no storyteller, at least in my opinion, no good storyteller ever wants to kill a PC. It's more of a you're prepared to do so when that's what's called for in the situation. Generally I think that storytellers that go into it really wanting to kill a PC are either sadists who shouldn't be doing the job or are telling a very particular type of story. Like in 10 Candles, you expect that, the person who's running things is going to eventually kill somebody, because it's kind of the whole point, is that by the end of the session, everybody's dead. But I don't generally like storytellers who set out to kill their players. So
no, I think it's a fair assessment, because I know of certain like adventures for certain systems where like the point is that only 2 of the players are going to make it out of the session. So at some point, people will have to die.
Yeah. Now, if like I said, if that's something that you as a group have approached and decide that you want to do, that's not an issue for me. It's storytellers who look at the things that their players have created, these people and these characters that their players have created and gotten very invested in, and decide that just because they can, they're going to kill them. I hate that. I was just like, what's the point? Why are you the only person at the table who gets to have fun? Is how that feels to me. And I'm also of the opinion that every storyteller should be their player's biggest cheerleader. Like, yes, my NPCs are frequently trying to kill you, but I want you to succeed.
Yeah, now, of course, it doesn't mean you hold back.
Right, no, never hold back, because then it takes all the fun out of it and they feel like it got handed to them.
Yeah. No, you're there to create the tension and drama, not to necessarily be like, all right, everyone, this person's not going to come back to the game because they're very upset.
Right. Like, at the end of the day, if I as the storyteller wanted to kill the PCs, they'd just die in the first session, and that's not fun. It's not fun for me. Teddy. It's not fun for them. Listen.
And we could just play Wraith.
That was planned, and he knew it was coming, and I don't feel bad at all. I thought it was exactly what the season needed to set the bar for tension really high and make it very clear the stakes that they were playing for.
It's true. And he told us when he was on the show that he knew it was coming. So
yes,
he was just waiting. He was just waiting for the shoe to drop, basically.
Which is why then he had to go and make a character that everyone loves, so that way everyone would feel absolutely awful.
Yeah, and I didn't even tell him to do that. I just said, look, this is what I want to do. I want you to come in. I'm going to treat you like a player. You're going to have a journal like all the players. You're going to get art like all the players. You, for all intents and purposes, are going to go through the exact same process that they are. Here's the only difference. I want you to go into this eyes wide open, knowing that your character's going to die in the first episode.
Yeah, you're going to die.
And weirdly enough, they almost saved him. And I was like, oh, shoot, this is going to screw up the story all kinds of ways because now I've got to figure out what to do with Teddy. But because y'all rolled exceptionally well and were very determined to save him from the semi-sized wolves that were chasing you. So I was genuinely worried that either Teddy was going to survive and I would have no idea how to deal with this extra character, or that Teddy and somebody else were going to die in episode 1. And I was like, I don't know what to do, because y'all got close a couple of times where, had like been like one success on shy on a roll or something like that. Somebody else would have gotten snatched, not just Teddy.
Interesting.
I was just why do they keep dancing with the thing that wants to kill everybody? I don't understand. Leave it alone.
I can tell you the answer to that because very early we decided no one left behind. That's what it was. And Eddie was part of us. So it's like, we're not leaving him behind. If he is salvageable, we're going to try it. And I think because we all assumed that he was a player, we assumed that he would survive and that we would have to put in the work to make sure he does survive. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah, I know. I get it. Like, I'm not mad about it. It went great, but there were moments where I was genuinely nervous for all of you. I was just like, this may be a very different season. Like, right. I may have to postpone the wolf story and have the people who survive go into the underworld. Like, that may be what season 1 has to be before we could even start the wolves.
Yeah, or you could just play Wraith, right?
No, we are not playing Wraith in the Scion universe. That's horrifying.
Yeah, it sounds bad. That sounds I would argue that sounds almost worse than regular Wraith.
Right? Thankfully, the Scion universe has like proper underworlds, like multiple proper underworlds. There are places that people who die go. They don't become wraiths; they're just there as spirits, and and because it's mythology, you have the chance to go and retrieve them if you can. Either A, get really lucky, B, make the proper deals with the right gods, or pull off the impossible, which Scions do on an almost daily basis.
Just don't be Orpheus. Don't do that.
Don't look back. That's the big thing. Don't look back.
Yeah, and I think that Damien sort of hid something there, because like it was, while it was like this thing that created this potential change in the whole campaign idea, it actually is, I think, what led to feeling like they lost an actual player, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it was good. Yeah,
it was genuinely one of the proudest moments I've ever had as a storyteller. Was when episode 1 was over, and when Gary yelled at me as I took you guys to break. He was so mad, and I've never had a player yell at me in that way, and I was so excited. I was like, yes, that's what I needed. That's what I was looking for.
You monster.
Listen, I've been yelled at by players before where it wasn't a good thing. And there is a difference between, no matter how upset they are, you can always tell what the good yelling is about, because you're getting the reaction that you wanted. And the bad yells are very different. So yeah, no, I season episode 1 was probably one of my favorite, my proudest storyteller moments, like just ever in 20 plus years. So
could we ask the other two what their favorite episodes were, since you did
absolutely.
that?
Absolutely, I was gonna ask that, but yeah, no, go for it.
No, you go for it. You were gonna ask it. You ask it.
Okay, fine. Cyan, what was your favorite episode?
Probably, I think it was episode 6, and that was the first episode where Sarah Baby Driver was activated. That was really cool.
It was an awesome episode. I really liked that. You guys did a great job with coming together. Damien, what was your favorite episode?
Don't know the number, but it's definitely the one where Oliver and Chris had that familial banter that you only get between kind of good friends, that good-natured ribbing and insult that, you know, you get between sort of besties. That kind of made Chris a little bit more real for me, I think, at that point. He was pretty real already, but that really cemented it for me.
It was a great episode. I really liked seeing how Chris and Oliver kind of developed as a friendship, because they're such an unlikely pairing. That I really, like, I wasn't sure how well they were going to do together at first. And you two found a way to make them work, despite the odd couple pairing that they are. And I love it
very much. Yeah. Chris loves Oliver like a brother. He really, really does. There's everything about Oliver Chris loves, I think. He's so very, very different to him, but yet he's so endearing. He feels that kinship with somebody who is not even a little bit like him at all.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of my favorite parts about the dynamic between all of the PCs this season was, weirdly enough, that Sarah was frequently, like, I don't want to say the foil, but kind of the foil, like when all of the banter would kick up and you'd get Chris and Oliver and Coda going, and they'd be, bouncing back and forth and getting all, getting really, like, passionate and whatever. And Sarah was always this very calm, collected force, which I really dug. But then she was also the one who had moments where, something would come out of her mouth and it would just floor everybody. Like, it's been a while since I drag race, but it's all coming back to me. It was one of the best lines of the season because it was so out of nowhere. I think everybody was like, wait, what? Like, even I was surprised by that. So
look, sometimes the intrusive thoughts just win.
Sometimes you just gotta let them intrude.
I loved it. I love your intrusive thoughts. They're great. Amazing things happen when the players give in to the intrusive thoughts.
I find that the best ways for full-on stories or backstories to come about is just through offhand comments, like in the heat of the moment, like that.
Yeah, like I God, there was one episode where they created a whole friggin' podcast on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, to this day, I'm still like, where did that come from? Like, what? Like, now there's this thing I have to keep track of because it got thrown out as a random improv moment. So I'm like quietly writing like a little side script for like this weird podcast that you guys listen to.
That's awesome. I forgot what it's called, but it's like the Romance Rose one. I don't. Yeah.
There's like a hot middle-aged photographer and a murder mystery, and who could and it's a total whodunit, and I'm just like, I don't even know what's going on anymore. But I now have like notes on things that could potentially be happening in this podcast in case I get asked about it.
So we're gonna have like a side season of just a podcast on Hallowed.
I'm gonna have to write a podcast to get people from HHS to voice it. That would be hilarious. I'd be like, hey, Damien, come voice a podcast with me.
You won't be the hot middle-aged photographer, though. That'll be somebody else.
He could be. He could be.
Nah, he could be. He could be. I was just joking.
I lost faith.
I mean, back one of my gaming groups, we used to actually just have literally like a dry erase board on the wall in where we used to game, and we would write like those kinds of funny comments, and then like they would become plot lines sometimes. But we just had this board of all the funny sort of things we came up with on the fly that kind of stuck with us.
Yeah, I used to be part of my old gaming group. We used to have these big like sheets of paper. Like huge rolls of printer paper for like large scale printers. And we usually use them to like draw maps on and stuff, because this is back when like huge dry erase boards and dry erase mats were expensive or hard to get a hold of.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we would tack one up on the wall every so often, and it would become the place where like random quotes that came from the session would happen. Or would get written down. And while they weren't, sometimes they were plot lines, it was usually just a collection of funny things that came out of somebody's mouth. Or we're all like, how did this even happen? Like, what were we thinking? That was our little space to document those moments. And they frequently reflected and became like running jokes.
My buddies and I used to just do out of context D&D quotes on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the best one that ever came out of our gaming group, who used to include the player, the mother of the DM who would come and play with us as well. One of the best quotes was, "Because you've been blessed by Asmodeus, Mom."
Cute.
Nice.
I
Yeah,
would like to ask, oh goodness, we already did the NPCs. I would like to ask both of the players what your favorite moment in the game was. Not like whole session, but like your favorite moment, whether that was a moment that a PC showed a lot of growth, or something funny happened, or a moment where you got to feel particularly badass. And you can't say Baby Driver again, Cyan, because you've already said that.
I mean, I already have another one that's in mind, but it was the second time we were at the farm, and we were, both Sarah and Chris were kind of ribbing on Oliver. It was funny at the time, but then he spent that last willpower, and then it got sad.
It did get real sad.
Yeah. But
I felt a little bad for what we had done to him. I was like, oof, okay.
Afterwards, it was better because Gary was just like, no, this is great. I love it. This is hilarious. But, Oliver's out of willpower. So I was like, okay, good. If I say something that hurts your feelings, tell me.
For me, sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to ask you what your favorite moment was.
For me, it was grabbing the two kids and jumping off the third floor balcony and landing on the ground. As you know, I built the character pretty much to jump tall buildings in a single bound, the whole $6 Million Man Steve Austin thing. So being able to actually do that, grab two teenagers, one under each arm, and jump off a third floor balcony and land and then sprint to a vehicle and shove them inside, that was Chris coming online, I think, for the first time. And I loved everything about that. And it just came to me in the moment. I hadn't planned that at all. It just came to me.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you. I'd forgotten that you had built him to be able to do that when I had planned out that little adventure. And then you did it. And I went, shit, this is going to be much easier for him than I thought it was going to be. I mean, it's not a bad thing, but I had totally forgotten that you had built him to be badass in that way. And I was like, oh, shoot. Right. He doesn't just shoot things. But it worked out, and it made for a great moment. And you guys went on to Baby Driver Sarah.
That's right.
I think that's one of my proudest moments. Like I've had this moment in both of my big shows that I've done for HHS, where the party comes online together. For Wayfarer, it all happened in the last episode, and I genuinely went into that last episode thinking that the whole party was just going to die because they had such a rough time all season. Nobody could roll well. They were struggling with everything I put in front of them, no matter how simple it was. And then that last episode, they came online, and Scott's character, oddly enough, pulled out a roll where he had more successes than he had dice.
Yep.
And I went, how does that happen? Like, what?
Very
That's how criticals work, baby. Yeah, that's how criticals work.
So when that happened, that was amazing. And then that happened for the Scion group in the episode where Sarah got Baby Drivered and got to show off and do this thing that she was not at all built to do, but because she had the sheer amount of support from the people around her, that you guys just piled dice on top of her. And it just blew me away. I loved that. That was great. And that's a really awesome moment as a storyteller because you get to see the thing that your players have been working towards. Especially a storyteller like me, where I build everything with the idea that you guys have to be able to function as a group. Nobody should be able to solve this on their own. And if you try to solve it on your own, it's not going to end well. So That was a great moment for me, was seeing that the whole group come online and take Sarah from like 3 dice to 13 or something like that.
Yeah, it was about that. Yeah.
It was a lot. And that was with you guys. Like, you still had to roll and you had to get your own successes, and then I took your successes and cut them in half, and that's how many extra dice you gave her. Which isn't really a mechanic built into the game, but it worked out really well. So I was happy with it. Yeah.
Ooh.
So
Any other questions for anyone in this room?
I was prepared to get grilled more than you guys have.
Yeah.
Not gonna lie, I came in here like braced for war because I had to be yesterday, and this has been pretty simple.
Yeah, where's that infamous Chris grilling? Just kidding.
Damien's not Chris.
He grills meat, not people.
Good point. Good point.
Okay, well then we actually had some potential questions, because we some of the questions that got asked to the group from people yesterday, we threw into the questions we asked already. So that's why we kind of had some overlap there. Let's see. Got some extra questions. Damien, how did Chris come to decide that Artemis likes to be called ma'am?
So he had lots of things to call her. At the very start of that conversation, he said, how do you prefer to be addressed? Because there were many things that he could have said. He could have said mother, mum, your highness, goddess, all sorts of things. He chose ma'am because it's really clinical and functional and not emotional in any way, shape or form. And actually, the way he said ma'am was a big F you at the very end. That was what he used it for. Ma'am was an F you punctuation, because that's how he felt. But yeah, I'm not going to go anymore. I'm not going to elaborate anymore, actually, for the moment.
That's fair. No, that's how I thought it went. It seemed that the chat may have thought differently, but that's how I thought it. I was taking it that way.
Right.
So I got that vibe.
I didn't take it as a fuck you punctuation. I apparently completely misread that whole thing, because I thought that was like him being finding a way to be respectful even when they were like arguing and sniping back and forth at each other.
Oh, he was. Ma'am was ultimately a very respectful thing to say, and so he used it. But it was still an FU, but it was a respectful way of doing it. So if Artemis had said anything, he would have said, well, I called you ma'am. It was respectful. I didn't, whatever you read into that is entirely down to you.
I love that. I'm going to put this on your shoulders. You get to be the one who said the wrong here. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, my feeling was just knowing some bits about Chris's personality, the way he portrayed him. I kind of felt that it was more like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
So, Scion.
Yes.
Who's Sarah going to represent next against the gods?
There's apparently a lot of people who need to unionize, like the dwarves and the nymphs, apparently. So, well, I guess we'll start there.
Oh no. I don't want my game to become a courtroom drama. We've done this already.
We went from Scion to Phoenix Wright.
Right?
Objection.
Yeah, we'll have Office, and then we'll have courtroom drama, then we'll have podcasts, and then maybe we'll get season 2. Well, I think that if we're out of questions, then maybe we'll just go ahead and end this for today. What do you think, everyone?
I'm down for that.
Sounds good. Okay.
Yeah, I'm good with it.
Wild. I think this is officially putting the lid on the can of season 2 or season 1, so I can prep for season 2. God,
that's what I think too.
To think about.
And this will be my last sign off for a little while. So thanks for listening, everyone. These episodes are dropped on Thursdays at noon. If you're a patron on the Patreon for $5 and up, they're released to the public 1 month later. So if you're listening to this on YouTube, then you're behind in your Hallowed Haven talk news. Thank you for listening, but think about subscribing so you can be up to date with your talk news for Hallowed Haven Studios. Thanks, everyone.
Bye bye.